Rather than conducting a policy experiment and then, once you have collected all your data, trying to find out which mechanisms are between the treatment and the outcome, as in mediation analysis, you may also want to conduct a so-called mechanism experiment. What's that? Well, in that case, we actually manipulate the mechanisms that are supposed to be at work. So you are thinking of affecting a certain outcome and of a policy, and obviously you have some ideas about what drives the effect of this policy, and then rather than manipulating this policy, you take those drivers, those mechanisms, and you start to manipulate those. For instance, here in the causal diagram, you're not going to manipulate screen activity at night in some manner by an encouragement design. Rather, you're going to manipulate experimentally vary exposure to blue light, for instance. Doing such a mechanism experiment is a valuable screen, because if you find that the supposed mediator, so the mechanism by which your policy is supposed to work, has no effect on the outcome, so in this case D is close to zero, then you don't need to go any further on that path and you can forget about that policy. If you do find that D is not negligible, then you can take a next step and see how can we find treatments that affect this mediator most effectively. Now, a mechanism experiment has been conducted into the effect of blue light on sleep quality. There are people wearing glasses that block blue light, and they looked at the outcome of melatonin levels, and melatonin levels are a good proxy of sleep quality. And then obviously this experiment was conducted in the time of the year that it's not dark at like 6 p.m. right? So this is conducted in the summertime, and then indeed if you wear those glasses with a blue light filter, your melatonin levels go up much more at the night time, so you will sleep a lot better. So yes, the mechanism experiment shows, okay, blue light matters. And doing such a mechanism experiment makes, rather than a policy experiment, makes a lot of sense. And there's a nice quote here from Jens Ludwig et al. If we believe we know something about the mechanisms through which the policy may operate, why limit ourselves to using this information only after a policy evaluation has been designed and carried out? Why not use this information to help inform the design of the experiment that is being run? Why not design experiments that are explicitly focused on isolating the effects of candidate mechanisms? Mechanism experiments may also be a lot cheaper than policy experiments, because you can directly manipulate the mechanisms that is supposed to work, and you can really get a huge treatment dose. And as a result, you need a much smaller sample to be able to come with conclusions with sufficient confidence. And so you get a lot more power for a smaller sample. As we just discussed, it's a valuable screen. It may prevent lots of policy experiments that are based on ideas about mechanisms that don't really work. And also, as Ludwig et al. Point out, once you know the mechanism, for example blue light, it's easier to expect what aspect of a treatment or the setting in which the treatment takes place moderates the policy impact. Next step is then to find out which treatments affect the mediators. So for instance, in this case, so we know that blue light matters a lot, and that then becomes our new outcome. In medical science, this is called a surrogate clinical endpoint, and that then becomes the dependent variable of interest for future experiments. This also happened in our case, so we know that blue light matters, but then we look at screen activity. Does screen activity, if we manipulate that, does that matter for then exposure to blue light? And then next, how does it affect sleep quality? Again, the outcome is melatonin levels, and what the research shows is that it doesn't matter. So doing screen work at night does not affect exposure to blue light. This should not be too surprising, because the light intensity of screens, like the screen of your laptop or a tablet, is a factor of 6,000 lower than the light intensity of daylight. So basically, it's all bogus. You know, that those screens would suppress melatonin levels. They don't. So in the causal diagram showing the relationship between screening activity at night and sleep quality, we can now cross off blue light. Not that blue light doesn't matter, because our mechanism experiments showed that it did, but our treatment, screen activity at night, does not affect this mediator.